If you're just getting started in Davinci Resolve, you're probably coming from Premiere Pro or Final Cut Pro. If not, that's okay. But if you are, you can do something in Davinci Resolve that will allow you to basically import your keyboard customizations, your keyboard shortcuts into Davinci Resolve. So you could use Premiere Pro or Final Cut keyboard shortcuts in Davinci Resolve. Obviously, the tools don't perfectly match up, but it's a great starting point. You come over here to these three dots and you can import a preset. You can also export a preset for any of these programs, but you can import your preset from Premiere Pro or Final Cut Pro. So that'll get you started. That's the end of the video. No, I'm just playing. But something you could do if you're new to Davinci Resolve, you want to start using it, but you're just not really sure, well, how to get started, is you can just start color grading in Davinci Resolve. I've got a specific how to color grade in Davinci Resolve video coming out very soon, and that'll give you the tips to get started, but that'll just kind of cut your teeth and get you familiar with the Davinci Resolve workflow without actually having to edit in it. But let's say that you're not satisfied with that. Well, you can watch this video, or you can watch any of the channels I linked in the description that are incredible Davinci Resolve tutorial channels. I'm trying to release more Davinci Resolve tutorials as well, but these guys have been doing it for a while, so I check them out if you want to learn Davinci Resolve. I'm going to go page by page and talk through each of the pages that I use in Davinci Resolve, and I actually only use 5 out of the 7, which is probably different to a lot of people, but I'm not super familiar with the cut page, so I don't use that. I just use the edit page. And then when it comes to Fusion and Fairlight, which would be the motion effects and the audio page, I don't use those as much either. I have been using Fairlight a little bit more just because it gives you some really helpful audio. It's honestly a really helpful audio interface to edit in. If you're just starting out, the media page is where you're going to do a lot of your footage organization. So when it comes to footage organization, what I love about Davinci Resolve is that you can just grab this here and this folder from Finder, drop it right in, or from whatever Windows file management you're using, and then boom, you've got everything there. But it'll even organize in subfolders. Turn any camera into an area. This one has a subfolder, so we'll do that. And boom, now we have the subfolders. You've got your regular stuff here, and then new, you've got the subfolder there. So my organization is not super good for my YouTube videos, but it will help you a ton. And the thing that makes that so beneficial is you can do all your file organization in Finder and then just drop the master folder into Davinci Resolve and it'll all populate automatically. Super sick. Next, if we're sorting through footage, you're not going to want to use the whole clip necessarily. Double click a clip and you can look at it, scroll through it, and you can hit an in and an out point. Then eventually when you're in the edit page and you drag that file into your timeline here, it's only going to drag the in and the out point, and it'll even give you this little red line here to show you what part of the clip is being used on your timeline. But I want to get ahead of myself. I don't need to do that yet. So let's go back here. Another thing I like to do is if I find a clip and I like it, I may right click and flag it as green. I might flag it as red. And if it's somewhere in the middle, then I might flag it as yellow. I would assume that you could set up shortcuts to do this, but I haven't done so. It would make the process a little bit faster, but it'll get you through it. And last 2 things I think you should know about the media page is that 1, you don't have to use the media page to import your footage and everything. I'll show you how you can do that in the edit page. But if you do decide to use it, that's awesome. And there are some benefits to it. One of those is smart bins. Now, I haven't dove into smart bins, but I know they're super powerful. And so I'm going to link a video up here that is just going to explain smart bins to you much better than I could. So really the goal of this video is to not only tell you everything I know about Davinci Resolve and how to get started in it, but to resource you. So if I don't cover something, someone else has, and you can learn from multiple people. Again, skipping the cut page because it's just an interface that I don't really prefer. I've watched some videos on it, but I've never really gotten into using it because I just don't really connect with it. Now, if we're talking edit page by itself, then, this is what it looks like. No footage, no nothing. You've got one viewer here, all of these tools, and some video and audio tracks over here. If you've ever edited video at all, it's a very familiar workspace and everything like that. So up here on the left, we've got media pool, which, as you might imagine, is just the media tab condensed down on the edit page. So you can really hold all of your media here, and you can drag from this as well. I do that all the time, but you can also just import media straight in. So if I wanted to throw a clip from this video, if I want to throw it in here, boom, it's in there. I don't have to do import or anything. There is a way to import. You can import XMLs, you can import whole bins, which would be folders, all that stuff, but you can also just drag it right in. So no need to overcomplicate it if you don't have to. And so far, everything I've talked about is not exclusive to the studio version. You can do all this in paid. But next we've got the effects tab. Now this effects tab is a mixture of paid and unpaid effects. I believe all of the open effects are paid. I could be wrong on that. Someone fact check me in the comments, but I believe they're all paid. This effects tab, it could get a little confusing, I understand, but this effects tab actually is a lot of Fusion effects. So these are custom Fusion, basically presets that can be dropped on. So like Mr. Alex Tech makes these magic animate, magic zoom effects, and he makes those, I guess, in Fusion, but then when you drop them in, you can access them here. I love some of the effects. Like I use DVE all the time. I use the colored border somewhat. And then the video call one is also pretty cool. It gives you like this little video call interface, which is kind of sick. Now, next we've got the edit index. So you can track all of your edits here, tracks and markers there. That's awesome, but I honestly never use it. I don't use Davinci's sound library either, but you could download that and import your own sounds into that, which could honestly be super helpful if you're adding the same sort of songs and sound effects and stuff like that. So definitely something to keep in mind. You can have a couple of these open at the same time. Like media pool and effects are pretty much always open for me. But if I want a wider timeline view, then I could just, close them out, good to go. On the right side, we have a quick export option, which will give you just some quick and dirty presets for different social media platforms, or an H.264, H.264, H.265, or a ProRes export option. Those are set in stone, and you can actually link your accounts to these as well. So when you export, then it'll auto upload to whatever social media platform you select, or to Dropbox, which is honestly incredible. But I actually haven't used those, probably should be using them, but I'm okay airdropping it and then uploading it myself. Next, we've got the mixer here, and I love the mixer because, let's see, if we had, let's say we have multiple tracks of audio here, then we can pull this mixer out and we can adjust each track based on, if we want the music to be quieter or louder. You can also adjust the file itself or in the inspector, which we'll get to in a second. What I love about the tracks is, like, let's say I have a ton of different sound effects and I want the whole sound effect channel to go down a little bit. I can just adjust it in here, and that's a big, broad stroke change. And then I can also adjust bus 1, which would be your master. So I can bring the whole volume of the video down in the mixer. Super sick. And honestly, the mixer is a small version of the Fairlight tab. So it's much more condensed. If you go into Fairlight, you'll see you got a lot going on here. You got EQs for everything, a bunch of different effects. I'm not an audio guy, but when I've shown this to audio guys, they've been like, oh yeah, this is a thing I can work in. So I imagine if you are an audio guy, it's super helpful for you. But next, we got the metadata here, which I particularly just use to double check frame rates on stuff. Find a clip may look like it was shot in 60 frames, and I just want to double check it. Or if I've shot a hybrid of 60 or 24, I can double check it there, which is semi-helpful, but you're not going to use it all the time. What you are going to use all the time is the inspector. The inspector is the tool that unlocks the edit page. So let's dive into it. First off, we've got a video tab right here, and you've got transform, so we can zoom, we can reposition, we can rotate, which is pretty crazy. You double click on any of the titles here for the parameters, and it'll reset it to 0. Super lifesaver. You can change the anchor point, which if you are rotating, then it changes the point on which the rotation happens. I prefer the anchor point to be in the middle, so no shade here. Pitch, which is crazy, and a little bit of a yaw, which is also crazy. Flip, horizontal and vertical. Again, just double click it and it resets. Then we have a smart reframe. So the smart reframe allows you to put a little reference point on your subject and hit reframe, and it'll analyze the whole clip and reframe that subject to be in the middle of the frame. Now, this is limited by the excess that you have outside of your main 16:9 image, but it is super helpful to have, and I've used it a lot, honestly. We have a cropping effect right here, and I love this because all of these like tools are in the inspector. So all you have to do is select the clip you want to do it to, and then change the parameters here. And it's going to be much more simple than like Premiere, where if I want to crop something, I actually have to search the crop effect, throw it on the clip, and then crop it. But here it's all just right here. We got a little dynamic zoom, which transparently I've never used because I think it looks kind of cheesy, but it's here if you want it. We can change our composite modes and the opacity of those composite modes. Speed change, you've got some speed controls here. I personally right click and do change clip speed and adjust these speed controls here. They're kind of similar, but I just like this interface more. I'm more familiar with it. And that's what you're gonna find about Davinci Resolve if you're just starting out. There are a lot of different ways to do one thing, and they kind of just like keep the additional ways in there, even if they release a new way to, for instance, do a speed ramp. They're just gonna keep the old way in there because they're kind. They don't wanna leave anybody out. Next, we have stabilization. Now, this stabilization tool is pretty solid. It's not bulletproof. It's not gonna be as amazing as some other stabilization tools, but it is really solid. You got 3 different versions here that you can use. I often resort to translation, but it just depends on the clip, honestly, is what I found. So I'll try different ones. I may adjust the parameters here, and you can even do a camera lock, which will just lock on as it explains. It'll lock the camera. Lens correction here, we can correct some distortion or add distortion, which is kind of fun. You can let it auto analyze and it'll just correct it, or you can add your own, which is pretty cool. Don't know why I'd want my clip to look like this, but a lesser version of this could be pretty sick. Retime and scaling, this is what you would need if you're gonna do any like frame interpolation or anything like that. I've been playing around with this, but I think there's better AI options out there. This is just something that's a little bonus here. There are other open effects that will do that better, but if you want to do a quick and dirty version of some retiming and scaling, you can do it in the inspector. The inspector is just like a one-stop shop for basically all the quick tools you'll need. And then you've also got super scale, which is going to upscale your image, which is pretty insane. Do a little noise reduction and some sharpness, which you'll find I'm a pretty basic editor when it comes to Davinci. I don't use every single thing they make. I use the bare bones and a little bit more, and that's pretty much it. Smart Reframe, I believe, is a paid effect, as well as some of these other ones. So you're not gonna get all the tools in the inspector for free, but if you buy a Blackmagic camera, you get a free 2 seats to Davinci Resolve. There's also people always selling seats to Davinci Resolve on eBay, so you should check that out. Also, Davinci Resolve is $300, but it's a one-time payment. So to me, you're always gonna get the updates. It's just a one-time payment as at the time of recording this video. Now, they could change it up and everyone would get mad and I would be really upset. But as of right now, you pay once, you're good for life. So that's pretty sick. Now, let's go through the tools that you have in the edit page. I'm already getting tired. I hope you're not getting tired. Hopefully this is helpful to you. This is gonna be probably one of my longest videos, but so many people have asked for it. So first off, the selector, pretty basic selection. You just press A, you're good, you're selected. We've got this trim edit mode here. It's T. I really love this one because I can adjust. Well, can't do it with that clip, but if I want to pull this clip in here like this, and I hit T, then I can like adjust the portion of the clip that's on the timeline, which is super beneficial. I can push the clip out. So let's say I need this clip to go a little bit longer, but I don't want it to cut into the following clip. I can move it out that way. This tool here is the dynamic trim mode. You hit W to get to it, and full transparency, it scares crap out of me. So I've never used it, but it's also like not essential. I do think it references a tool that's in Final Cut Pro, so you may, if you're a Final Cut Pro user, you may like the dynamic trim mode, but it's not for me. Then we've got blade, boom, B for blade, cuts. Doesn't get simpler than that. So I'm commonly just B for blade, A for select, and then I may hit delete to delete a clip, but it doesn't have to be that hard. The way that I cut most of my videos is I will actually Command B, which then just cuts on the playhead, as we can see right here. And then I will Command right or left to select the clip to the right or the left that I want to delete. And then I'll shift delete, which will cause a ripple delete. Now you have to be careful because as you can see down here, it also cut and shift deleted this like audio file here. So you have to be kind of careful when you're doing this. Sometimes I'll lock audio files. That's super helpful so that doesn't happen. If I lock it and then I shift delete, see, audio doesn't change. So if you got an audio track like some music at the bottom, you may lock it and that'll save you some time. But that is super helpful as well. You've got the magnet tool, the unlink tool. If the magnet's off, then there's no rules. It's not going to snap to grids or anything. If the link tool is off, then I can just select the video and it won't select the audio. But if they are linked, then when I select them, it selects both the video and audio or any other linked tracks. Speaking of which, let's say that I want to link this video with the audio here. So I could select it, Command click, and then Option Command L, and then I get the little link emoticon here. Now it's all linked, which is kind of nice. Command plus or minus to zoom in and out. You've got your flags selector here. You got a bookmark or a marker selector here. You can change the colors of those. You can position lock everything, which then means that nothing will move, which is kind of cool. I guess you could use that if you want to. I personally don't ever feel the need to. Like you can click on this little thing and change to transform, and then it'll let you like just freaking move this stuff around with like a weird interface like this, which I think is pretty funny to use. Even rotating it is kind of crazy, but I don't really want to do any of that. Oftentimes I'll use that if I'm moving some like titles around screen and everything like that. I like it because it doesn't like snap to grid. All the rest of these you're not going to use as often unless you're using some open effects layers or anything like that. One thing I forgot is the inspector audio tab and the inspector effects tab. So I'm doing a great job, guys. Honestly, this is so much like information. I totally understand if you've already left or if you're thinking about leaving this video now, but we're about to get to the color page, which is the most exciting part. So hang in there. Now, let's say that we put an open effects effect on a clip here. We're gonna wanna adjust that effect, and so we can do that in the effects tab of the inspector. And if we add more, then it stacks them. So we can reorder the effects because as you would imagine, sometimes if an effect comes before another effect, it has a different result. So that's important to know. You can also trash them. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. One thing I think a lot of people don't use is the timeline organization in the edit page. Now, as you can see, I got a timeline here, but if I wanted to command in and do a new timeline, I could do that. I could change the parameters of that timeline just by unchecking the use project settings. Like maybe I need a vertical timeline because I want to do vertical clips in my YouTube video. Cool. Now I've got two timelines here, and I love having these tabs open because then it allows me to see all my timelines. Premiere does this automatically. I'm not sure about Final Cut, but you have to turn it on in Davinci and you have to turn it on per project. So all I gotta do is come up here, display stack timelines, and you're good to go. You can also come over here and hit add, and you'll now be in double timeline mode. So let's say that I wanted to have two timelines. Maybe I've got my selects in the top timeline and then my building timeline for the video, the clip side, like I'm building out the whole video in the second timeline. I can just have that here and then pull this stuff into a new timeline. And yeah, I can just drag it down here and it auto copies it and it's good to go. And you can zoom for each timeline independently, which is pretty cool. So yeah, this is honestly, if I'm editing testimonies, honestly, if I'm editing interviews, this is the way I edit them. I get my selects knocked out and I put them in a timeline above, and then I'll probably close out those things here, get a full long timeline view, and then start dropping them into what I would call a builder timeline to actually build out the story. So that's it. That's literally everything I could think of for the edit page. I may make a shortcut specific video. In fact, I've actually already made a shortcut specific video up here. It's honestly my key to mouseless editing, and it's sped up my workflow a ton. But onto the color page. We're skipping Fusion because it's just scary and I don't want to talk about it. Now the color page. So I'm not going to go through every single thing you need to know about color grading in Davinci Resolve because there is, I mean, an insane amount of information about it. I am going to make a how to color grade for beginners video, so let me know if you have any questions you want me to put in that video. But today we're just going to talk about the simple pieces of the color page. How does the color page work? Well, it's all centered around nodes. And nodes, if you option S to add nodes, nodes, you can essentially think of them as water filters. And this little pipe here is the water. So you've got your water source, which is your ungraded footage. And then you've got all of these filters, and then like the water feeds out into your final image. So for instance, if we wanted to if we want to add a LUT, well, we'd probably add the LUT at the end. So let's, for instance, add this nifty Fuji XH2S to Alexa Rec 709 LUT here. I think it's good. It's going to give us a good Rec 709 look, but as you can tell, this shot is a little warm. So then I backtrack and I do all my color and contrast and exposure adjustments before my transform node. So let's do a little contrast. Honestly, don't need a ton more contrast here. I'm looking at my waveform and I can see, okay, 0 is true black. So we're pretty good. We're in the true blacks over here and down here, which I don't really love. I guess that's not exactly black, but anyways, what I do see in this is we need more midtones, and a lot of exposure is actually in the midtones. So I'm going to raise that up a little bit. And then in my second, so I do all contrast and exposure in the first node, all white balance adjustments in the second node. You can do white balance adjustments with the temp and tint. It's not the best tool. There are better tools, but if you're just starting out, that's what I would do. And you can white balance with the eyedropper, which is kind of helpful. The key with the eyedropper would be to have a color card at the start, and that's going to allow you to get a true white based on what your key light is. But as you can see here, I use the eyedropper, but the light that's hitting this white ceiling up here is actually the warm lamp. So it white balanced way too warm. So I may adjust it here and just dial it into what I want it to be this way. Now, it's not perfect, but we're getting there, and it's pretty close. This is a simple 3-node structure. It's how a lot of people will color grade their videos. Basically, each filter affects the footage, and when you're editing, like when you're changing parameters in a second filter, it's affecting the image that the first filter changed. So they're not all affecting the raw image. If you want to affect just the raw image, then you would adjust the first node, and everything after that is modified from the previous node that it comes after. So there's, like I said, there's so much more that goes into it. But if you wanted to do a 3-node structure, you wanted to stay in the primary color wheels right here, it would get you a base look. It would get you started color grading. You can put your LUTs in here. You can right click and hit reveal in Finder. You can find where all of your LUTs are, and you can just drop new LUTs into this folder here and then hit refresh on this, and those LUTs will show up. That's how you can drop new LUTs in and start color grading in DaVinci. But if you, let's say I like this look and I want to add it to all these others, what I like to do is grab the still and then pop it in and add it to that. You can also grab this still and export it, and I could export it as a JPEG or as DPX or DRX for as a LUT. You can also right click here and hit generate LUT and make a LUT that you can totally use and put anywhere you want, which is pretty cool as well. So yeah, you've got some monitoring tools here. The waveform is my favorite, but you also have parades if you have seen those and prefer those. You've got a vector scope, and my favorite thing to do is turn on the skin tone indicator. Using that is a more involved process, but it does help you dial in your skin tones pretty well. And then you've got a histogram, which is fairly common on a lot of just consumer cameras, so that could help as well. There are tons of different tabs here. You got a camera raw tab, color matching tab, primary color wheels, HDR wheels. Inside of each of these, you've got these other different things. You got log wheels and primary color wheels. You got these color bars, which are just these, but in bar form. You've got HDR wheels, which you can change the color space and gamma to match your camera, and then it gives you accurate exposure changes based on your camera's color space. That's crazy. I don't know how they do that, but it's there. You've got RGB remixers. You can adjust the amount of red, green, and blue factors that are in the image. It's friggin', whoa, look at that. That's insane. You've got noise reduction, motion blur you can add. You've got custom curves. You can make your own custom curve and like give it a little bit of a film look, you know? I mean, I don't know, that could be cool. You've got these different things here, which are kind of crazy. So if I wanted to select this wood here, I can click it. It'll give me 3 points with one middle point, which is the wood. And I can bring down, I can change the like color of the wood in hue versus hue. If I do it in hue versus sat, I can bring down the saturation of that particular color. This is really helpful if you've got some really intense reds or greens or anything like that. Super helpful. I can bring down the luminance. So I can select a color, bring the luminance down. I mean, like, there's so many different tools. I can't even go into all of them. There's 3 more in this just one tab. We got the color slicer. This is new to DaVinci 19. I don't even know. This is honestly a new tool, and I haven't even used it, but it's apparently pretty powerful. You've got the color warper, again, another color modification tool. The qualifier, if I wanted to qualify and just select my skin, I could do that. Shift H to show what you're qualifying. You can feather it out, woohoo, like that. You can deselect certain things, so don't want that. And you can reselect certain things, so maybe I want more. But well, then it's just kind of weird. Actually, I did that on the wrong node. But you would want to do this in a node after your LUT, and then when you qualify, then it works. I'm gonna just undo that there. But I could change like the highlights just by selecting the highlights and Shift H. I can see I'm selecting highlights. I want to cool off the highlights, so it's in a node right here, and I just come in here and cool them off. See? This is not a good example, but you could do a ton in DaVinci Resolve. I can't even touch all of it. Like, I'm struggling to explain all of the things that you can possibly do. Power windows. These are masks that affect, like, basically put whatever the LUT is doing into a window. You can flip it so it only goes on the outside or on the inside. This is insanely beneficial. The possibilities are actually endless. Tracking. I can track this window to the scene. Magic Mask basically is rotoscoping in DaVinci Resolve, powered by AI, I'm pretty sure. So I'm gonna draw on a line right here, and then boom, like I hit track, and it'll just track me. If you hit Shift H, you can see what you're selecting again. See, I got a little extra here, don't want that. Minus, boom, there, and it's gonna be pretty solid. You can dial in the settings here. Freaking blur or sharpen, I can blur it, or I can increase the blur or decrease the blur, which would increase the sharpen. Very helpful. I've got keying, so I can adjust the amount of, you know, if you have a LUT, this is not the way to use a LUT, but if you have a LUT and you want to dial it back a little bit, you could do that in the key output, but that's not really correct, so don't do that, but you could. Size and input, you can adjust the size of your clip. This is what I mean when I say there's so many things you can do in DaVinci Resolve, and they have like the same way to do multiple things. Like you can do the same thing multiple ways. Perfect example. Why do you need to resize in the color tab? Maybe just because you want to, and they've got it here for you. You got this 3D tab that I can't click on because it's super special, and that's pretty much it. I will be making a full video on just color grading in DaVinci Resolve, where I run through my color grading process, independent of film emulations. But if you are curious about how I color grade in DaVinci Resolve, and I haven't released that video yet, you can look up here, and I've got a color grading film emulation video you should check out. Again, not really going to touch on the Fairlight tab, but it is super beneficial. You should learn the Fairlight tab 1000%. And last but not least, the Deliver tab. Now, if you remember from the edit page, you can quick export here. That'll get you 50% of the way there, maybe 75% of the way there. But every time I export out of here because it allows me to do just audio, and I can change the audio that I want to export and throw it into, a lot of times I export my audio and then send it to Adobe's podcast AI thing to enhance it. That's always helpful. But there's tons of different like selections here for different formats and everything. Same for this. I don't know if you're using any of these. I'm pretty much just QuickTime, NH264, or QuickTime and ProRes. So that's the way I export most of the time. But then you've got advanced settings here, which can get crazy. I use these occasionally for niche exports. And then if you're making social clips and you want to export your subtitles with it, you hit export subtitles, burn in a video, and you're good to go. What I love is if I have multiple videos in a timeline, I can do an in and out here. I can do video 1 and throw it into this folder here. But then I hit add to render queue. It doesn't start rendering it yet. And then I can do another in and out point here, change the name, add to render queue, and then I can render all of these videos at once if they're in the same timeline. So that's super beneficial if you're making a ton of, social media clips or something like that. There is so much to Davinci Resolve that I can't even scratch the surface in one video. So, honestly, for the rest of the year, I'm gonna be making a lot of Davinci Resolve tutorials going over specific tools in Davinci Resolve. So if there's something you're curious about, let me know in the comments. I'll make a video about it. I already have a long list and I'll add yours to the list and I will make a video about it.